The Oklahoma Sooners needed a huge fourth quarter to overcome Kansas. Ultimately, with the Sooners pulling out the victory, they moved to 8-0, sending Kansas to 1-6, but there are some things in this game we need to talk about because there were some interesting happenings. Before we do, as always, you know the drill. I want to hear from you. Hop down to the comments, give me a Y for yes or an N for no. Are you surprised at how OU won this game? And let me know what you're thinking. Let me know what your biggest keys to victory were. If you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, hit that bell notification. I do constant college football content. You don't want to miss any of it. And if you enjoyed this content, be sure to like and comment down below. Those interactions, those small, are really massive to content creators such as myself and getting both picked up and maintained by the YouTube algorithm. But with all of that being said, we need to hop right into this because there's a few things we need to unpack. And I want to start with Caleb Williams because Caleb Williams had himself a day. It was a day that was not without freshman mistakes. He had a few freshman mistakes, but he had some really big plays. None bigger than the fourth down run he converted for a touchdown and the fourth down run in which he ultimately took the ball away from Kennedy Brooks and kept Oklahoma's offense on the field. Because Kansas's defense actually was able to affect Oklahoma's offense. And if we look at the stats, Caleb Williams, even though he had a good day, was held under 200 yards because Kansas was able to take away Oklahoma's rushing attack from any sort of consistent basis. Kennedy Brooks had less than 80 yards, averaging 3.3 yards per carry. Caleb Williams affected the game in the run, but if we take away his longest run of 40 yards, he had 7 attempts for 30 yards. So Kansas was really able to affect Oklahoma's rushing attack, which in turn was able to affect Oklahoma's passing game. And that kind of bleeds me into something I've wanted to talk about, something that y'all have asked me. Why does Oklahoma's offense look different with Caleb Williams than it did with Spencer Rattler? And though that answer is multifaceted, there is a simple answer to give. And simply put, the answer as to why Oklahoma's offense looks so diametrically different with Caleb Williams as opposed to Spencer Rattler is Caleb Williams' mobility. Oklahoma's offensive line is a unit that has continued to get better as the year has gone on, but they have been with their struggles. And when you mix that with a rushing attack that wasn't being feared by the defense, defenses were keying in on the deep ball and letting Oklahoma try and beat them underneath. Oklahoma would get antsy, try and force things, and it would create games that were much more complicated than they needed to be. When you insert Caleb Williams and all of a sudden a defense cannot just completely sit back on their heels and wait for you to come to them, they have to start playing more aggressive. It opens up everything else. It certainly, and most importantly for OU football, opens up the downfield pass. But that emergence of the run game comes in multiple areas. It came with the offensive line continue to gel. We saw it emerge in the Kansas State game with Kennedy Brooks having a big day. We really saw it in the Texas game, and especially when you mix the mobility of Kennedy Brooks with the mobility of Caleb Williams. But today we see once again, as great as Caleb played, Kansas was able to stifle Oklahoma's rushing attack. And so at the end of the day, Oklahoma has to go back to the drawing board on certain aspects because you get the victory, but it wasn't the victory in the manner you would have liked. Being held under 200 yards passing, being held with your lead running back under 80 yards rushing, under 3.5 yards per attempt against a defense that's not very highly regarded is good that you got the win, but also sends you back to the drawing board to figure out how can we improve. On the flip side, Jason Bean for Kansas actually had himself a day. 17 of 23, 246 yards, 10.7 yards average, 1 touchdown, and he also added 59 yards on the ground. Now, Oklahoma's defense has been up and down throughout the entirety of this year. They came out to start the year very strong, and since then, it has kind of degraded. Now, to be fair to Oklahoma's defense, there are a ton of injuries on that side of the ball, guys that will be making big impacts when they come back. However, I do think we need to talk about one of the areas that is concerning right now, and that is the secondary. And even though there are guys out on that secondary, Oklahoma's secondary is really getting picked on right now. And you hope that it will be as simple as getting those guys back, plugging them in, and those problems being solved. But you also are just sitting there hoping that's the case. It is very pertinent right now that Oklahoma gets some of those players back because this secondary is one that has talent, but you are absolutely going to need something more if you're going to go into the college football playoffs and want to have success, because that is where things will change drastically. Kansas played Oklahoma very good, but they do not have the athletes and the athletic capability of some of these institutions that Oklahoma would be facing in the college football playoffs. There are these talented teams down the road that Oklahoma ultimately wants to be in the position to play, but there are some things that have to come along. And once again, I don't want to be unfair here. I think we need to circle back to the fact that there are multiple individuals out on Oklahoma's defense. I completely concede when they come back, it will be a positive to this Oklahoma defense. But that doesn't diminish the fact that there are some things that have to improve. The running game has got to be consistent for Oklahoma, because if it's not, defenses are having a bit more success limiting Oklahoma's offense. It was the problems we'd seen plague the offense at the beginning portions of the year, why so many OU fans were wondering, why isn't the offense looking like the offense of old? And it all revolves around the run game. If the run game's not there, defenses are completely playing the Sooners differently. Because ultimately, you want this Oklahoma team at their best. That means the running game being at its best. That means the defense being at its best, because that's what it's going to take to ultimately get where Oklahoma wants to go. Hop down to the comments. Let me know what you're thinking. That's it. See ya.